Welcome back. Studio number 310-441-0555. Let's go to a caller now. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hi, Dr. Farid.
Hi, thanks for calling.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to let you know a little bit about myself before I tell you what my issue is.
Okay.
I'm 54 years old. I've been divorced twice, and I have two kids, 24 and 27, and my daughter lives with me. I have a recurring issue, and I really don't know how. I know kind of what the root of it is, but every time I know it, that doesn't help me in not getting into another situation. So I quickly, when I meet somebody, and I kind of hit it off with him, or he seems attractive to me, I quickly form emotional attachment to that person. To the point that even that person even thinks about moving away, or any kind of little indication that he's not going to be there, that makes me feel like I'm just going to, it's like death to me. Recently...
even that language you use there, I think it's powerful, and it can sound exaggerated, but there's something true in that, because you said it feels like death to me. And so when we look at attachment, we create attachment bonds as humans and mammals. It's the sense that we want to be connected to those people we're dependent on, because without them we don't live. So a baby does feel attached in a healthy way to their parents because they need that. And so when we fear losing that, we can have a fear of abandonment even in older age. There's a sense of we die without that person, and you can recognize that you too quickly get attached. But when it's happening, we can look at that, it seems like it's hard to stop it, or it could feel like this time it's real, or there's something you're going away from within yourself, some pain or some emptiness that you are seeking so much to get away from, that you are jumping at any opportunity to create that type of a connection. And you said, something yourself, that you think you know the root of it, but it doesn't take it away, which is often the case. First, we don't even know why we're doing most of what we do. But then we become aware of it, or we can become aware of it. But it doesn't mean now that I know I can stop it, because the feelings are still there. So you can know that your fear of heights comes from this one time where you had a bad incident with heights or something. But it doesn't mean now when you're going to be in heights again, you're not going to be afraid. That fear and that feeling will still be there. So if you can tell me, what do you think is the root of this when you say you think you know where it's coming from?
Well, I feel that... abandonment issues, fear of abandonment. It's a huge thing, and it keeps on happening. I know I had an alcoholic father and depressed mom when growing up, and I grew up very much alone, because I was the last of 5, and there was a huge age difference. So I pretty much grew up like the only child. And I lived in my own imagination for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So I think that has something to do with it. I think that's the only thing I could come up with that has an issue.
Well, that's a lot. Yeah, I mean, the way you said it. First of all, your father being alcoholic, mother being depressed, age difference. So the siblings, you weren't as close, and then also if there's an age difference, your parents were older when they had you, but it seems like they were not so available. And I was talking before about avoidance and those types of things, but often we go as a child, you learn to go to this fantasy world to survive, because life was too painful, it wasn't giving you what you needed, and it seems like you may still be going there. When you're meeting someone, you quickly go into that fantasy of kind of like a happily ever after. This is your Prince Charming, and they're going to make you feel good. And it's that young girl who never got what she wanted, and she still is thinking in this fantasy type of way, and it's hard for you to stop it. Also, you might, when it's happening, it's almost like you don't want to stop it because you want it to be true, or there could be this feeling that she didn't get what she wanted ever, so she deserves what she wants, so why would we stop her? But unfortunately, you're hurting yourself, hurting her, this inner child in the same ways, and you might even be pushing people away. This is often what happens when people have a fear of abandonment. like a lot of our anxieties, they become self-fulfilling prophecies, because if you're afraid someone is going to abandon you and then at any moment they're giving you some space, you freak out, you might actually push them away because they get overwhelmed, they don't know, and then unfortunately it feels to the person that it's confirming, see, people go away, you can't trust people, you can't rely on them, not realizing that the fear itself was creating the bad result you wanted to avoid, you know?
Right. And the latest one, if I can tell you
Sure.
what happened, well, we were in this religious group, of activities. We would see each other every week as a group. And I started to have feelings for this person. And then, any little move that he would make, in my mind, I thought, okay, this is because he's interested in me. He would stay afterwards and talk for hours with me and, say, how happy he was that he's getting to know me and all these things. And he created this close bond with my daughter, friendship. And so I started to have these feelings, but I was so afraid of, and one time I heard that he might be moving away. That's when I really, really panicked, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die if this person moves away. And then I finally had to confront him that I have very strong, I feel that, this is after we had hours of conversation regarding a book that we read together and so forth. So I confronted him and I told him that I feel like we have a strong connection. And he said that, oh, yeah, I also feel that. But because I just came out of a very bad relationship, and he gave me the whole story about this one woman that she kept going and coming back, going after a few months, disappearing, coming back, even though they were engaged. Last time she left was September, and he's still healing from that. So I said, okay, that's fine. I totally, understood what was happening, and I left it at that. Until afterwards, I felt like he's more distant all of a sudden, and he's not as friendly as before. He's not trying to discuss any, anything. We used to have these really deep conversations about different things, like movies we watched or books that we read. But he stopped doing that, and he seemed very, very cold and distant. Until one event that I saw that he's with this other woman who's like 23 years younger than him. And she even had, and he's like 63 and this one was like 38, these little two boys, and he was so happy and, playing with them and saying how much he loves kids and all these things. And after that, I felt like I cannot be in any place that he is. I even quit those activities that he was also there because it was just painful to see him.
Okay, it's and that woman was not the woman from before.
I don't know that. I never got to ask him. I wanted to ask him at some point, but then I didn't want him to feel like,
So, it's clearly was very painful what you went through. It does seem like even the relationship part of it, although you were talking, it was unclear what was going on. Some of that you were likely leading in your head too, probably going ahead, I'm assuming, as well, about what was going on. So, there was that part that we want to be aware of, that what can happen is we're also so afraid of rejection that we don't give ourselves a chance to have what we want. And so you might keep it in your head rather than actually see what can really be there. So this is likely an issue you're going to see come up in lots of areas of your life, of going into your head and living it out there more than in reality, and then you won't end up getting what you want in reality, unfortunately. But when you told me he pulled back after you had that conversation with him, I could understand that didn't feel good to you, and especially with the feeling of abandonment and the anxiety you have when it comes to attachment, it was not pleasant. If he had asked me for advice, I would have told him that's probably the right thing to do, because clearly you're showing that you have feelings for him, that it's not just a friendship or platonic. And so for him to communicate more with you and get closer with you at that same level likely would not be the right thing to do. So that part, I understand that you felt that distance, but I think that makes sense that he did that. I think you took that as a rejection, or you took that as him pulling back, or maybe you took it personally, but I think that would make sense to do that, to pull back. Now then, seeing him with someone else, we don't know if this was the person from before. I can see how that obviously also brought up feelings of being replaced, being rejected, that were not pleasant, and you just could not even help being around him. But I think what we also have to look at is this strong feeling you have towards him. That's also the part where I want you to see your responsibility in letting it become what it became. So it seems like, I don't know, how long did that last, this feeling of friendship and connection that you had where you were talking to each other?
Like 2-3 months.
Okay. And that's not an incredibly long time, but it's, a little bit of time. But I don't know what the setting was, but you might have felt anxious about bringing up something about you and him. But I would hope you would have done that. If we look back, and let me ask you, if you could have done things differently, if anything, what would you do differently?
What could, behavior-wise, or
well, anything. If you could go back, is there anything you would do differently in this situation?
I cannot think of a thing.
Okay.
Maybe emotionally, I wouldn't build up something in my head, or keep on reminding myself that this could be just my imagination. I mean, other people around us, I think that they help feeding this fire, saying, "Oh yeah, we can see something's going on," and this was just not my own thinking. Other ones around me were making comments.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, not that they were doing this, but most people, I think people like things to happen. Well, let me put it this way. We have our own fears of taking action, but when it comes to other people, we like to see things happen. So most people, if you ask them, like, yeah, maybe there's something there, maybe talk to them, do something about it. Everyone will say, yeah, go ask that person out, but they themselves might be anxious about it. So you ask them, like, yeah, there's something, and there's a friendship, and there could have been. I think you brought up a good point. One is being aware of. It's hard to stop those daydreams at times. I don't know if you did that, if you imagine you and him and what it could be like, but we often go there, and that, goes back to, as you recognize yourself, your own tendency since childhood to live in that fantasy world was the safe escape. And if you do that, we start to create these experiences, and even although we know they're not real, we feel them when we daydream them, and they become part of our feeling about that person. So this is why someone could see a celebrity that they've never met before, but they have a relationship in their head in a way, right? Because of what they've imagined in their head, even if nothing has happened in between them. So you likely did some of that, which I think is a good point to recognize. You have to be very mindful of that, because daydreaming feels like a safe drug, but it really is like a drug. In minimal amounts, of course, we're all going to do it here and there. That's fine, and it even could be good to look at what's coming up there. But if we take them too far, it can be a drug that distracts us from reality and does even have negative consequences, because it could change how we feel about something that might not be connected to the reality of what we're going through. So that's something you have to be aware of. Even sometimes it's called pathological daydreaming, when we daydream too much, or it can be harmful. So daydreaming seems innocuous, it seems safe, but it can have harms for us, and for some people more than others, something you want to be aware of. The other thing
what do you do practically? What is some practical things that you can do when you feel it coming?
Well, this is where mindfulness is important, of coming back to the moment. So you imagine you and this person, we're going on a date here, this is happening, whatever it is, and you have to stop yourself. Like, okay, look, because it feels good. That's why it's hard. That's why I'm saying it's like a drug. It feels so good to go there, and it's your comfort zone, and you've gone there. And for everyone, it feels good, but for you, it could be even a stronger feeling and a stronger tendency. You have to counteract that. You have to stop yourself and say, I know it feels good to think about him and me together, but let me come back. And even more than that, okay, let's see if I can make this daydream a reality, to see if it's there. And that was the other thing I even kind of started suggesting, but then wanted to ask you what you think. But bringing up things even sooner. For most people, I think that's a good thing. Again, easier said than done. But especially for you, because you're saying you have this tendency to go too far ahead in your own head, that I would want you to, just share something of, hey, this seems to be something that we have, or I feel like there's a connection. Would you like to and seeing what's there, which is scarier. It's always safer to let it stay in your head, but then you create these situations. So it's something that I think it was good that you brought it up after however many months. That was good, but possibly you could have mentioned it earlier. Let's say that might have been something to look at, that approach, before it kept getting built up in your head.
So do you think that keeping away from him so that I don't see him is a good idea, or I should have continued and suck it out or deal with it?
I mean, I think, you have to decide what's making sense for you. It does seem like you have an anger towards him, like there was a betrayal, which likely is going to be related to betrayals from your parents that you felt. And so something that's also important is we can have an awareness of what happened, but healing that is very different from just knowing about it. So it's like, oh yeah, maybe I feel abandoned because my parents, for these reasons you shared. But going into those feelings and healing it in your own inner work, but of course even better to do it with a therapist, that can help lead to some healing. And it's not that it's just going to go away. Likely it'll still be there, but it might be less hot, those feelings, that might make it easier for you to go into something else. And so what's going to be important for you is to pursue also someone where it's clear from the beginning what's going on. We do meet people in activities we do, and that's good. So it's not to say don't look for that at all. But in this situation, it created the possibility for you to keep dreaming and daydreaming about it in your head, which for you can be quite dangerous, because the way you feel is like he betrayed you even though there was no relationship or no commitment there. But to you it almost seems like he's cheating on you.
What I feel betrayed, Doctor, is that he clearly was in a relationship with this woman. And for him to kind of be deceitful or dishonest to tell me that, I haven't healed from my last, that's why I'm not going to, pursue anything with you, I felt very betrayed and lied to. Okay.
Well, I was wondering what you meant by the deceitful. It's possible we don't know the details of what was going on, if it was still this person that then came back into his life. I don't know the details of what was going on there, obviously, and you don't either, to know what was going on. It does seem like the betrayal was more than that. I get the sense you feel like you and him had something, which you did have something, these connections, these conversations, hours afterwards. You felt misled in some ways, and I wouldn't say you're completely off the mark to think that it seemed like there was something there to spend hours after some kind of gathering talking to one another. That seems like something. It doesn't necessarily mean it's romantic for sure, but it's not out of line that you thought there could be some interest or mutual interest there.
The fact that he was asking me if I was single, and then going through the story of his divorces, his relationships, and sharing all that with me. I didn't think that you just share these things with someone that you have zero interest in.
Well, possibly you could with a friend or someone you're connected with. Now, I'm at we're a little bit past the commercial break. I want to continue a bit to kind of go into some of these feelings that you're having of hurt, which we don't want to ignore. So we're going to put you on hold, and we'll bring you on after the break, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were with a caller. Let's go back to them now. Caller, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Sure. So, before we went to the break, you were talking about the ways you felt hurt or betrayed in this interaction with this gentleman, that he was asking you questions or pursuing things in a way that you felt like expressed that he was interested in more than just a friendship, but then made it seem like that's not what he was looking for. So tell me more about that betrayal, or that feeling that you felt he was deceitful. Tell me more about that.
So, the reason that I stopped going to that activity, that he's also there, because I kept seeing him on the phone. I felt like, he must be texting her. And and it's funny, in that discussion, in that study group that we have, it has to do with marriage and relationships. And I had to blur. I was trying to find a way to bring out my, relieve my anger, get it out of my system. And I would say, yeah, men are mostly just interested in the looks of the woman, and how skinny she is, because the only thing I could see with that woman and I would be like, she's super, I'm not overweight, but, for her, she's super, super skinny and is 23 years younger than him.
Mm-hmm.
And, I felt like if I continue going, I'm going to blur out in front of everyone and make myself embarrassed, because I just couldn't hold back. And I couldn't keep it inside, how angry I am. At some point afterwards, I wanted to text him and ask and tell him how dishonest he has been with me. And he wasn't just ready for a relationship. He was already in a relationship, but I had to stop myself.
Okay. So, look, you're angry. We want to understand your anger, and then you can decide how to act on that anger, hopefully in some way that will lead to it not being held onto in this way, that, because right now it's hurting you, it's also hurting that even these activities that you might enjoy going to, you're not going to.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you have to go immediately. You might need a little bit of time. But go more into that anger. So you're saying I get the sense you feel like he led you on and lied to you.
Yes.
Like he led you on and showing he's interested in you and having something with you in those conversations. And then when you brought up the conversation, he was not honest in saying where he was at.
Exactly. The next day, then I texted him after that phone conversation. I said, thank you so much for trusting me and sharing some, your past with me. And he was appreciative. He said, yes, I'm so, thank you so much for listening to me. We're going to always have this two-way communication, honesty with each other. So that itself made me feel like, okay, we have moved up in our friendship. But then afterwards, after the next time we saw each other in a few days, he was completely cold and distant.
Well, we don't know what happened in those days. If again, this person was from his past that came back that he was talking about, if it was someone new. But so you felt like that conversation clearly crossed a boundary for you and your relationship from your side. It wasn't clear. We can't say that you and him entered some kind of relationship at all. It was just a conversation that could have even been two friends having a close relationship or a close friendship or conversation. But anyway, you took that as something that meant more than that. So I think that's why there was this huge betrayal you felt, that because it almost, the way you talk about it is this feeling that he cheated on you, like there was some kind of betrayal in that level.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which
I might have issues with trust also.
Okay.
Because growing up, my dad used to cheat on my mom. And my mom used to always tell me, men cannot be trusted. I have seen your dad going with this other woman. So she would share those things with me.
Yeah. Well, and that's going to make you even more vigilant about, when you talk about abandonment, it's also about you have to make sure the person doesn't leave completely, or also, betray you in some way. So you're going to be even more anxious about having the person, which might lead to pushing them away, or imagining having them before you have them, because in your mind he's perfectly loyal and perfectly there for you, but then we don't know what's happening yet in reality. So there definitely is something there. What happened in your marriage, by the way? I know we haven't touched on that yet, but what led to the divorce there?
The first divorce, the father of my kids, it was a 10 years marriage. He was very mentally abusive. So he would, get angry, and he would break the walls, break anything that he saw. So he had a lot of temper issues. The second one, after a few years of being divorced, because my kids were so young and I was so tired of, handling all of that, I married someone after knowing them for 1 year, and then that person found out that he was very, very abusive emotionally, abusive to me and my kids, and also he was a porn addict. I later on found out that all of those, sick behavior that he had, it had to do with his addiction. So I ended up after 10 months of marriage.
Okay. So unfortunately, you can see there's a pattern of the men you've been attracted to, that they are abusive.
Yeah.
You mentioned your father being an alcoholic and cheating on your mom, and I don't know how he treated her in general, but it doesn't seem like you're painting a good picture so far.
Yeah.
So there is this expectation you have of men that's not good, and also an anger you have towards men because of what you went through, and so it does seem like you're creating those same experiences in some way.
Yeah, I do feel that. And normally I'm choosing men that I have realized that recently that I'm somehow attracted to men who are emotionally unavailable or broken.
Yeah. And again, this is one of those where the awareness doesn't change it, because you're going to feel this attraction even if you're aware of it. But this is where, you talk about being proactive. We were talking about being aware of the daydreaming and not letting yourself go down that path. You also have to be aware of who you get attracted to, because the problem is right now when you're talking to me in this logical way, it's very easy to make sense of it. But if you meet a man and you feel that way, you're just going to feel like, no, but this guy makes me feel amazing and I feel so good and I want to be with him, or this time it's right, and that's the hard part, is that when you feel it, it feels real. It's the same thing we have with anxiety, where people will say, oh, I worry too much about this stuff and nothing ever happens. And then the next time they're anxious, like, no, but this time it could be the real thing, and it freaks them out. So it's very easy to think about it, but when we feel it in the moment, unfortunately, it still feels as real, even with that awareness at times. So you do have to hit the brakes a lot on yourself with this, where when you find yourself attracted to someone, unfortunately, you have to, it's almost like doing an audit to see, are they in any way like these men, from the past, these broken or unavailable men in some way. And even this man you're talking about now, it seems like there was some blurriness about how available he was. Was he still with this woman? Was he not? Even he said, what he told you explicitly was, I'm not emotionally available right now for a relationship. And we don't know, I don't know if he's in a relationship with this woman that you mentioned you saw him with. Maybe he is, but nonetheless, he was not emotionally available.
I saw a picture of him. I saw a picture of him and his and her kid on her phone lock screen.
Yeah. Okay. That I can sense the betrayal in your voice when you say that. How that must have been hurtful. Yeah.
and her calling him darling. Darling, that. It keeps on replaying in my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The more I hear it, the more angry I get. I even became, this is kind of sick, I became friends with her on Facebook to just find out, what does she have that I don't have?
Well,
it's kind of like comparing.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you acknowledging that is very, you knew it was not a good thing, but you felt driven this way to figure more out. And the thing is, this is not something that you need to solve in the sense of like why he did. We don't even know what he did. But in your mind, you've already told yourself a story that this man was interested in me, but this more appealing woman came along and he wanted her over me, and I'm somehow not enough. And I have to find out how I'm not enough, because then maybe I can solve it. And also there's definitely some, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. You kind of want to be able to snoop on her and see what's going on. So, you're doing that as well. But the truth is, your father and mom treating you the way they did was never because you were not enough. And your ex-husbands being emotionally abusive was not because you were not enough. It was in a way because you thought you were not enough that you accepted and expected these types of relationships. So that's the part where you're not enough, is in how you think of yourself, but not who you actually are.
That's a very good point, that you be not feeling enough, being enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my friends always point out to me all the things that I've accomplished by myself. I just moved to a completely different state. I was able to again start, buy a house again, to start all fresh in such a short time. And all my life I have really done well. But it's just that I feel like, okay, what else do men want? I have lost 30 pounds. I am well educated. I have very high paying job, and I'm very independent. what is it that men want? Do they want because this woman works in a salon. And I'm thinking, this is what they are looking for? A woman who's not well educated, who's not doing well? Am I supposed to not go back to that?
And even there's an anger in how you talked before you got to that point, which obviously you're angry about her, but just it feels unfair, and you're right, but that feeling is more in your head than the reality, and you're giving this man, we can see so much power that he's a spokesperson for all human males, that men want people who work in salons more than you, and that's not the reality. But because you got so attached to him, it's just like how we are with our parents. It's like they define our world, but he's defining the whole world for you of what men want and what they're looking for, and you not being enough. And so your anger is going to be there for a while, but what we have to look at is underneath there is a pain and a wound about yourself and how you were treated from childhood that led to you feeling this way. And that's a much longer term type of a thing. And unfortunately, I also think because you feel like you're not enough, you're more likely to avoid making things real because you're afraid of the rejection that's going to be the reality. That if there's a man you want, he's not going to want you. So you might be afraid to make it more real. Now, you did with this person, I think it's very good that you brought up that conversation with him. You could have avoided that much longer too. So as much as I said you could have said it sooner, easily you could have waited longer and it probably would have been worse still. So that was good, but I get the sense that you might not believe that a man who's going to love you and treat you well will want you. So you're kind of in this catch-22 where it's like men are bad, and so you go towards bad men, but then even if there's a good man, you might not believe it, or you might not believe that they're going to want you. So it puts you in a tough place of how do you find that relationship that you logically would want for yourself. You might not think it's either there, like are there men like that from what your father did and what your mom told you about men and what you experienced, and then you might not know if they would want you if they were that good. So
how do you get over that?
Yeah, good luck. I don't it's a lot of work, but the first step is what you're doing is figuring it out. It's an easy thing to say go to therapy. I would highly recommend that because what you're dealing with are deeper issues that our conversation, I hope, opens your eyes and opens some doors, but that you're going to have to walk through and do the work that has to be done there, because it's a longer term thing than you can get. Again, it's that feeling. I can say you're good enough, and you say, yeah, I'm good enough, and then you go into an experience and you're not going to feel good enough, and it's hard to just shake that. So affirmations and things can work, journaling, and there's lots of things you can do, activities, but these are deeper things that you've been carrying for several decades that you're not going to just unwind quickly on your own. So I would recommend long-term therapy, meaning like 6 months, year, more than that, if you haven't already.
What I have started to do, I listened to a TED Talk, and this woman was talking about how after 3 divorces, she finally figured out that she would marry herself. This whole idea of marrying yourself, and she would date herself, and and it made a lot of difference in her life and the type of people that she was attracting and the feelings that she had. Like she would be on a date and think, okay, let me see how I feel about this person.
Yeah.
It would be before that she would say, oh, let me see what he thinks about
does this
me.
person like me? Yeah.
Exactly. And so yesterday I started doing that. I said, I'm going to go out on a date, with myself.
Good.
So I did all kinds of things that I enjoy a lot. And I even sent a text to myself and saying that, oh, I enjoyed spending time with you yesterday, and I would love to do that again.
Well, then were you worried the person didn't text back? We don't want you to get
exactly.
the fear of abandonment might creep in there too. But that's very nice. I think that's great. Keep doing that. You deserve to take care of yourself, to love yourself, date yourself. The one thing when I heard you talking that I wouldn't want you to go too far into this path of not realizing what you want is to be with someone, but I think it is very important. We sometimes forget that loving ourselves, everyone says it's an easy thing, but actually taking the actions is something different. So that's going to be one step, but a TED Talk or a talk with me is not going to solve this. It's going to be a much bigger, deeper issue that's going to involve going to those deeper pains that likely you don't want to go to. And really the place to do that is going to be in therapy, where you unravel and unwrap those pains, because underneath these fears and these angers is a lot of pain and hurt that you experienced. And so
I've been trying so hard, so long to find a therapist. Unfortunately, that's one of the, I don't know why that is, the most difficult thing to find a therapist.
It can be tough. I don't know where you are, and we don't have to get into like where you're looking, but I would say find someone. They're not going to be perfect. They're going to be just good enough, just like a partner you find. And sometimes we can use that as a way of not getting too close, even with a therapist, is kind of finding some reason to get away from it. So I hope you'll find someone good and good enough that you feel like makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel like they at least understand you to a degree. No one's going to understand any of us perfectly, but a level of understanding, and then go into a long-term relationship with yourself, with the therapist, and understanding yourself better. Because those things are not going to go away. And in the meantime, keep dating yourself, keep doing all these things. If you find yourself attracted to someone, really take your time in looking at, okay, could this be the same pattern? Because it usually doesn't look the same when we're in it. It's like this time it feels good. And so you might even have to talk to friends and talk to other people to help you. And maybe even avoid talking to friends because that makes it more real. But I would hope you do that, is talk to friends and get their input on it, and be mindful that your radar is going to be a little broken for a while, which it is for most of us. So just be mindful of that.
Okay.
All right.
We'll do that.
Good luck. It was nice talking to you.
It was nice talking to you, Doctor. Thank you so much for spending so much time
with me. Oh, it was my pleasure.
Me.
My pleasure. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, let's go to our last commercial break. We'll be right back.